The NFL world just got flipped upside down, and what Shedeur Sanders said after Kevin Stefanski's firing has everybody asking the same question. Did this man just expose something we weren't supposed to see? Because when you watch that interview, when you really listen to what he's saying and what he's not saying, it starts to feel like we just witnessed one of the most calculated, mature responses to organizational chaos that we've seen from a rookie in years. And the smile? That smile wasn't relief. That wasn't happiness. That was survival. Let me paint the picture for y'all, because this isn't just about a coach getting fired. This is about a young quarterback who spent an entire season playing under circumstances that would break most veterans, finding out his head coach lost his job. The same way you and I did, by scrolling through social media while sitting in the locker room. Not from management, not from a team meeting, from Twitter. And when they finally put a microphone in front of him and asked him about it, Shedeur Sanders gave us one of the most brutally honest, carefully worded interviews we've seen all season. Now, before we break down exactly what he said and why it matters, we need to understand the full context of what this season actually was for Shedeur Sanders. Because from what we've seen, from the timeline of events, from the way things unfolded publicly, this wasn't a normal rookie quarterback situation. This was something different, something uncomfortable. Let's go back to how this whole thing started. The Browns had Deshaun Watson. That was supposed to be the guy. Massive contract, massive expectations, and it didn't work out. The injury happened, the production wasn't there, and suddenly Cleveland found themselves in a position they didn't plan for, needing a quarterback immediately. They drafted Shedeur Sanders, and at the time, a lot of people thought it was a luxury pick. Someone to sit and learn, someone to develop behind Watson for a year or two. But that's not what happened. What happened was Shedeur got thrown into the fire way earlier than anyone expected. And here's where it starts getting interesting, because based on the footage we saw, based on the way the depth chart moved, it looked like there was some hesitation, some back and forth. They started other guys first. They gave reps to veterans who clearly weren't the long-term answer. And when Shedeur finally did get his shot, it wasn't with the full support of a clean slate. It was mid-season chaos, limited weapons, an offensive line that was already banged up, and defensive injuries that meant the team was playing from behind more often than not. Now, I'm not saying that to make excuses. Two things can be true at once. Shedeur can be a talented quarterback with real potential, and also have been put in a situation where success was going to be incredibly difficult. That's not protecting him from criticism. That's just being honest about what we watched. And what we watched was a rookie quarterback trying to figure out NFL defenses while working with backup receivers, playing behind a patchwork offensive line, and dealing with a defense that couldn't get stops when it mattered most because key guys like Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome were in and out of the lineup. That's context. That's the reality of his situation. But here's what really has people talking. Throughout the season, there were moments, games where it felt like Shedeur was starting to figure it out. He'd show flashes of red zone efficiency. He'd convert third downs when the team desperately needed it. He'd make throws under pressure that showed real NFL arm talent. And then the next week, it felt like the game plan changed. The play calling got conservative. The trust level seemed inconsistent. Fans noticed it. Media members started asking questions about it. And the phrase that kept coming up in Browns circles from what we could see in the discourse online and in sports talk was, are they setting him up to fail so they can justify drafting another quarterback? Now listen, I can't tell you what was happening behind closed doors. I can't tell you what Kevin Stefanski was thinking, or what Andrew Berry's plan actually was, but I can tell you what it looked like from the outside. And from the outside, it looked uncomfortable. It looked like a rookie quarterback wasn't getting the consistent support and opportunity that young players typically need to develop. That raises questions, not accusations. Questions. And then the season ends. Browns miss the playoffs again, another disappointing year in Cleveland, and boom, Kevin Stefanski gets fired. Head coach gone. And this is where Shedeur's interview becomes absolutely crucial, because the way he found out about it, the way he responded to it, tells us everything about how messy this situation really was. A reporter asked him who told the players about the coaching change, and Shedeur, with the most deadpan delivery you'll ever see, said, I think social media informed the players first. Let that sit with you for a second. The players found out their head coach was fired from social media, not from the GM, not from ownership, not from a team meeting where they could address it like professionals, from Instagram, from Twitter, the same way fans in Ohio and people across the country found out. That's not how professional organizations operate. That's chaos. That's dysfunction. And Shedeur calling it out, even in that calm, measured way, was him basically saying this is not normal. But he didn't stop there. When the reporter tried to dig deeper, tried to get him to talk about the coaching staff, Shedeur smiled and said, "See, now you trying to get me in sticky business." That smile, that response, that's media training meeting street smarts meeting genuine intelligence. Shedeur Sanders understands the game within the game. He knows that every word he says can be clipped, twisted, used against him. So he gave them nothing. He acknowledged the chaos without adding to it. He protected himself while subtly exposing how unprofessional the whole situation was. And then came the question everybody wanted answered. Did Shedeur do enough this season to show that he should be the starter going forward? His answer was perfect. Not cocky, not defeated, just honest. I think I did what I was able to do, and I definitely grew from a lot of things, and I got experience now. I'm always the same. Confidence-wise, I'm there. But that's not in my hands. That's not my decision. I can't speak on what other people feel. Break that down with me real quick, because there's layers to what he just said. I did what I was able to do. He's saying he maximized his situation. With the weapons he had, with the line he had, with the circumstances he was given, he did his job. I definitely grew. He's acknowledging he's not perfect, that there were learning moments, but he's also saying he got better as the season went on. Confidence-wise, I'm there. This is huge. After everything that happened, after a season where it felt like the organization wasn't fully committed to him, he's still confident in himself. He still believes he's the guy. But that's not in my hands. And here's where it gets real. He's putting the responsibility back on management. He's saying, I did my part. Now it's up to y'all to decide if you actually want to build around me or if you're already planning to draft somebody else. That's not a rookie response. That's a grown man who understands his value and isn't begging for validation. That's someone who's been through something and came out the other side stronger. Now let's talk about what actually happened on the field in those final two games, because this is where the story gets even more interesting. The Browns were essentially eliminated from playoff contention. Kevin Stefanski's job was on the line, though nobody knew he was about to get fired. Shedeur was playing with backups everywhere. The offensive line was patched together. Key defensive players were out. And you know what Shedeur Sanders did? He won. 2 straight wins to close the season. Against Cincinnati, a team with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 of the most dangerous receivers in football, with backup corners trying to cover them, Shedeur led game-winning drives. He made clutch throws. He showed poise in the pocket. He did exactly what people said he couldn't do. And here's what some observers were saying. What was being discussed in Browns media circles and fan communities? It looked like Shedeur was supposed to struggle in those games. It looked like the expectation was that he would play poorly enough to make the decision to move on from him easy. But he didn't. He competed. He won. And that complicated everything for the front office. Because now, how do you justify drafting another quarterback when your rookie just closed the season with 2 straight wins in terrible circumstances? How do you explain that to the fan base? How do you explain that to the locker room? This is where the phrase sabotage starts getting thrown around in fan discussions, on podcasts, and social media debates. And look, I'm not saying there was a conspiracy. I'm not claiming anyone was actively trying to make Shedeur fail. But what I am saying is that the circumstances, the timing, the way things played out, it raises uncomfortable questions about how the Browns handled their rookie quarterback this season. Were they genuinely trying to develop him? Or were they hedging their bets, keeping their options open, not fully committing to him so they could draft someone else if it didn't work out immediately? Because here's the thing about developing young quarterbacks. It requires patience. It requires consistency. It requires giving them weapons, giving them protection, giving them a system they can grow in. And from what we saw, it didn't always look like Shedeur was getting those things. Let me be clear, though, that this isn't about making Shedeur Sanders out to be perfect. He's not. He's a rookie. He made mistakes. There were games where he struggled with accuracy. There were moments where he held the ball too long. There were throws he'd probably want back. That's normal for a first-year player. Nobody's saying he was flawless, but what's also true is that he showed enough. He showed arm talent. He showed processing speed. He showed leadership. He showed toughness. In games where he had no business succeeding given the roster around him, he found ways to move the chains and score points. And maybe most importantly, he showed maturity. The way he handled the media, the way he talked about his teammates, the way he responded to adversity, that stuff matters. That's the foundation you can build on. When Shedeur talked about his adjustment to not having his father, Deion Sanders, as his head coach for the first time in his football career, he said something that really stood out. He talked about how it was good to build different relationships, to experience different coaching styles, to have those life lessons as building blocks for future situations. That's not just quarterback talk. That's someone who understands that everything he's going through, even the difficult stuff, is preparing him for a long NFL career. He's not running from the challenges. He's embracing them. He's learning from them. And when asked about what he needs to work on, what he learned this season, Shedeur broke it down like a veteran. He talked about understanding what defenses are trying to take away, about knowing his own strengths and weaknesses, about studying how teams game planned against him so he could be better prepared moving forward. That's film room talk. That's someone who's serious about his craft. That's not a guy who's feeling sorry for himself or making excuses. That's someone who's ready to put in the work to get better. But here's where it circles back to the organizational dysfunction. Because all of that growth, all of that potential, all of that maturity means nothing if the Browns don't commit to him. And based on everything we've seen, based on the way this season played out, it's not clear that they're ready to do that. The coaching search is happening now. Kevin Stefanski is gone. Whoever comes in as the next head coach is going to have a massive say in what happens at the quarterback position. And that's where everything gets uncertain for Shedeur. Does the new coach want to work with him? Does the new coach believe in him? Or does the new coach want to bring in his own guy? Draft someone he's more comfortable with? Start fresh with a clean slate? These are real questions that don't have answers yet, and Shedeur knows it. That's why his responses were so carefully worded. That's why he kept saying things like, "That's not my decision," and "I can't speak on what other people feel." He understands that his future in Cleveland, maybe his entire NFL career trajectory, is in the hands of people who might not be fully invested in his success, and that's a scary position to be in as a young player. What makes this whole situation even more complicated is the draft class coming up. There are other quarterbacks who are going to be available. Teams are going to be making decisions about whether to take a signal caller early. And the Browns have to decide, do we commit to developing Shedeur Sanders? Or do we hedge our bets and bring in competition? Or do we move on entirely? From a fan perspective, from what we can see in Cleveland sports communities and Browns discussion forums, there's a real divide. Some fans saw what Shedeur did with limited weapons and want to give him a real chance with better pieces around him. Other fans are skeptical, pointing to the losses, to the struggles, wanting the team to draft someone new and start over. Both sides have valid points. That's what makes this so difficult. There's no obvious right answer here, but what we do know is that Shedeur Sanders handled an incredibly difficult rookie season with more grace and maturity than we had any right to expect. He survived circumstances that would have broken other players. He kept his confidence even when it looked like the organization wasn't fully supporting him. He closed strong when he could have easily packed it in. And that smile in the interview, that moment where he acknowledged how messy everything was, that was him saying, "I see what happened here. I understand the game. And I'm still standing." The media reaction to all of this has been fascinating to watch. Some analysts are praising Shedeur for his composure. Others are questioning whether he did enough to cement himself as the future. National reporters are talking about the Browns' dysfunction. Local Cleveland media is debating what the team should do next, and through all of it, Shedeur's words keep getting replayed. Social media informed the players first. See, now you're trying to get me in sticky business. Confidence-wise, I'm there. Those aren't just sound bites. Those are statements. Those are a young player establishing his worth, protecting his reputation, and making it clear that he's not going to be anyone's scapegoat. Because that's what this felt like at times throughout the season. It felt like there were people, maybe in the organization, maybe in the media, who were ready to pin the Browns' failures on the rookie quarterback, who were ready to say, see, we tried with Shedeur and it didn't work, so now we need to draft someone else. But Shedeur didn't give them that narrative. He competed every week. He showed up. He improved as the season went on. And those final 2 wins, those were him saying, you're not going to be able to blame this on me. What happens next is genuinely unclear. The Browns could commit to him, bring in a coach who believes in developing young quarterbacks, surround him with better weapons, and give him a real shot to be the franchise guy. Or they could go in a different direction, draft another quarterback, turn the page entirely. Both scenarios are possible. And that uncertainty is what makes Shedeur's situation so compelling. Because this isn't just about football. This is about a young man's career. This is about whether he gets a fair opportunity to reach his potential, or whether he becomes another cautionary tale of a talented player who never got the right situation. What's interesting is how Shedeur talked about his offseason plans. He mentioned spending time with family first, with his son, decompressing from what had to be an exhausting season. But then he immediately talked about getting back to work, about connecting with teammates early, about studying film, about preparing for next year. Like, he's not waiting around to see what the Browns decide. He's taking control of what he can control. He's going to put himself in the best possible position to succeed, regardless of whether that's in Cleveland or somewhere else eventually. That work ethic, that preparation, that mindset, those are the things that separate players who have long careers from players who flame out. And Shedeur has them. That much is clear. He talked about building what he called the it factor with his teammates. Those connections, that chemistry, that trust that makes offenses click. And he's right, you can't just show up in training camp and expect everyone to be on the same page. It takes time in the offseason. It takes throwing sessions. It takes building relationships off the field that translate to success on the field. The question is whether the Browns will give him the opportunity to do that as their guy, or whether all that preparation will be for a competition that isn't actually fair, that's already decided before it starts. And that's the uncomfortable part. That's what makes Browns fans nervous. Because this franchise has a history of mismanaging the quarterback position. They've cycled through so many signal callers over the years. They've made bad draft picks. They've rushed guys before they were ready. They've given up on players too quickly. Is Shedeur Sanders going to be another name on that list? Or is he going to be the one who breaks the cycle? We don't know yet. And the fact that we don't know, after watching him compete all season, after watching him close strong, after hearing him speak with such maturity and confidence, that's the frustrating part. Because based on what we saw, Shedeur Sanders deserves a real chance. Not a half-hearted opportunity with one foot already out the door. Not a situation where they're drafting his replacement while pretending to develop him. A real, committed chance with coaches who believe in him and weapons who can help him succeed. Will he get that in Cleveland? That's the million-dollar question that nobody can answer right now. What we do know is that Shedeur Sanders is approaching this situation the right way. He's not panicking. He's not complaining. He's not making excuses. He's acknowledging the reality of his situation while maintaining belief in himself. And he's preparing to prove once again that he belongs. The Browns tried to break him this season. The circumstances tried to overwhelm him. The organizational chaos tried to derail him, but he's still here. Still confident, still ready. And maybe that's the real story. Not whether the Browns sabotaged him, not whether Stefanski's firing changes everything, but that Shedeur Sanders, through all of it, survived. He came out the other side with his head up and his confidence intact. That smile after Stefanski got fired? That wasn't about happiness. That was about knowing he made it through something difficult. That was about understanding his own worth even when others might not see it yet. That was survival. So what happens next? Does Cleveland commit to him? Do they draft another quarterback? Does the new coach believe in Shedeur or want to start fresh? Will he even be on the roster next season? We don't have those answers. And honestly, from everything we've seen, from the way this organization operates, from the dysfunction on display, maybe the Browns don't have those answers either.